Good afternoon and welcome to the very first Autistic Women's Panel hosted by Powerhouse Strong. My name is Jennifer Rees-Polson and I'm the founder of Powerhouse Strong. It's a personal safety and empowerment program, and I am truly honoured to be hosting this event today. The idea came from Sunny Donnellan. This is her baby actually, and it was in fact 2 years ago. This panel event has been in the making for 2 years, and that's 2 years of blood, sweat and tears, mostly tears on my part. Just kidding. But I'm not going to ramble on too much because our timing is very tight. I'm just going to quickly introduce the panel. We have Kayla Rodriguez. Just wave your hand. Hi, Kayla. Becky Semenova. Hi, Becky. Becky's all the way from Canada, by the way. Mimi Sapra, nice to see you, Mimi. Ford Gentry, did I pronounce that correct? Maya Sundermeyer, here she goes. Nice to see you, Maya. Laura Nadine, who's all the way in New York, she's sitting down here on the chair with Skyping. Hi, Laura, great to meet you. And of course, the wonderful Sunny Donnellan. Stand up, Sunny, woo! And we have our two moderators today for the panel, and that is Ashley Dudley. Say hello, Ashley. And Karen, is it Weissman? Nice to meet you, Karen. I'm not going to ramble on too much. I just want to give you a very quick overview of today's agenda. So what's going to happen is Sunny is going to come up and give us all a short presentation on what autism actually is. Then we're going to have 4 of the panelists coming up one by one. They're going to come up to the podium and they're going to give their presentations on their experiences with autism. Then we're going to take a very short break where you can help yourself to some light refreshments. Then we're going to come back and the last 3 panelists will give their presentations. Then this will be followed, we're going to remove the podium, then this will be followed by a panel session, and all 7 panelists will be up here, sitting up here, and our moderators will start with some questions for the panel. And then you, the audience, are very welcome to ask questions too. So without further ado, I would like to welcome Sunny Donnellan up to the podium. Thank you, Sunny.
All right. Hi, guys. So we contacted the media, and 11 Alive told us that this was an event just called Women in Chairs, which is the reason why they didn't want to broadcast this. So, really, this is a waste of your time. I don't know why any of you bothered showing up here today. My name is Sunny Donnellan, and jokes aside, we're going to talk about what autism is. Now, autism spectrum disorder is pervasive, which means that it affects our mental, cognitive, social, and learning abilities. And, there are links between cognition and learning and cognition and socializing, in which these links have been kind of severed in our brains from birth. That is what it means to be autistic. So we have to restructure these links in order to, we try our best, obviously, to function as normally as possible. Now, during an autistic's life, the average autistic is affected in these following ways here. First, we have that daily routines can be harder to follow because an autistic person may need a lot of structure to these daily routines. They have to be very much the same every day, very predictable. But you will also have some autistic people who over time to learn to adapt, to be more flexible. But some of us struggle with these transitions or changes, which just makes it very hard to cope with. So, part of the daily routine is, I want to say how meeting the demands of daily life can also be very stressful. So basically trying to meet the demands of school and work-related stress or school-related stress is where employers and teachers need to give people with autism spectrum disorder more time on tests and assignments or to get more stuff done. Maybe have fewer assignments at a time, especially given time and a half on tests, for example, is huge. This reduces a lot of anxiety. Now, some kids on the autism spectrum may not be able to get a career or a job because they are further in the forest of autism than some of us. Some of us are just deeper in the forest where they might not be able to have a regular job, and they may need a lot of assistance in everyday life, while others of us strive to, to a career and a major and everything. I would also like to say that socializing is also challenging for those of us on the autism spectrum. That being said, some of us have trouble looking at people in the eye, making eye contact. You will see some of us not understanding certain social cues, like jokes or sarcasm. Jokes can be taken literally, which is very annoying to neurotypicals, but what they don't seem to understand is that we have a hard time with jokes or sarcasm because we have a very literal mindset. And so some of us will learn about jokes and sarcasm over time, while others of us may continue to struggle for the rest of our lives. And also just simple conversations, starting and carrying out conversations is very demanding for some autistic people. But for others, like I said, over time, it gets better. I also wanted to point out, finally, that certain stimuli are very overwhelming. Have you ever seen a child on the autism spectrum cover their ears during a loud church service or whatever, or in a restaurant? So that is because their ears are very, very sensitive, which means that the noise coming in through the speakers, the people like singing or people talking, it can be very overwhelming and very stressful because it's too noisy for some people on the autism spectrum. However, some of us, when we grow up, we learn to cope with these certain stimuli, outside stimuli, and even enjoy music and going to parties and watching fireworks and stuff like that. Others of us continue to have sensory overload, which causes meltdowns. Now, one thing that everyone should be aware of is that autistic people may have seizures because of flashing lights. Not all of us have seizures, but some of us have epilepsy and disorders that cause seizures because of certain stimuli, overload, flashing lights, stress, or really strong emotions, etc. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is, where was the last slide? The meltdowns are very common among autistic people. I believe that every single autistic person has meltdowns, and this is because of sensory overload, processing disorders, processing delays where we may have a hard time understanding what is going on around us. So we need to find a way you need to let us exit for a while and give us time to calm down and recharge our batteries. Recharging our batteries is a way to prevent meltdowns, and we just need everyone to be understanding of that. Now, finally, I want to spread more acceptance and love in the autism community. I believe there is already enough awareness as is. And I'm Sunny Donellan. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Sunny. Thank you. My bad.
Hello, my name is Ford. I'm 21 years old, and I've been diagnosed with autism for a majority of my life, since about third grade or so. And I'm here today to talk about a topic that I think is pretty important. So, being a woman can be hard. I'm sure the ladies in the audience all know how much of a pain it can be, right? And being a disabled woman, that's like being a woman on hard mode. For us autistic folks, it's hard having to navigate this inaccessible world which frankly does not understand us, having to manage our difficulties we have in life as disabled people, and on top of that, deal with expectations we have in life as disabled people that come with being a woman, with being a woman too. We have a lot to deal with just being disabled, and with being a woman, it's rough when everyone tells you you've got to wear makeup, wear your hair a certain way, or dress right too. For some people, even so much as showering can be difficult, let alone all the extra effort required for feminine presentation. I think it's easy to forget that a natural look with minimum product isn't easy. Makeup is a skill, and it takes time, coordination, and energy. So many things go into makeup that I know I would struggle with. It's not uncommon for people on the spectrum. The fact is, for the average person, makeup can take around 15 to 20 minutes as is, and that's for an able person with good coordination, and as well as being fairly optimistic. Folk who struggle with motor skills and coordination will take much longer. For me, because of my meds, there used to be a time where I would shake so much I couldn't even put on like an even coat of nail polish. I can't imagine something like mascara or like eyeliner like that. Like that would be so hard. The issue is when it's hard as is, simply getting out of bed in the morning, the fewer complex, strenuous tasks, the better. It's not uncommon for autistic folks to struggle with energy, executive dysfunction, or both. Because of this, day-to-day tasks can be extremely hard. Even in non-extreme situations, there are people who have energy that is too limited to spend that much time on makeup. Women shouldn't have to exert themselves mentally or physically beyond their own limit just to please other people. You're not less of a woman if you can't or choose not to wear makeup or spend most of your time in t-shirts or comfy pants. I would love to see a shift in expectations on women away from having to look a certain way to be respected. Not all women have the energy, not to mention sensory issues and coordination. While it's not shameful that women on the spectrum tend to struggle with or choose not to perform femininity to standards set by society, this seems to cause people to regard us as lazy when we aren't. We just have more important things to use our limited energy on, and that's okay. We shouldn't be expected to sacrifice ourselves on the whims of others, including societal standards of gender representation, when not only do many of us struggle with energy, we might not even want to in the first place. This also extends to women who sometimes don't always present femininely. Energy can be a nebulous thing for some people, and even though someone may have energy some days, it does not mean they will consistently. Some days I have much energy, extra even, and some I have none at all, and struggle to even get out of bed. The fact that I have days that I have extra energy does not prove that the days I don't are me being lazy. Therefore, women who have put more effort on their looks on some days are not lazy on those they don't. For me, dress-up days have to be planned in advance so I can manage my energy in a way that allows me to have extra I need. This is not uncommon among people who are disabled, especially those with autism. People who don't present femininely shouldn't be regarded as lazy or looked at with contempt. It's valid not to spend all your energy on femininity, and while I have no disdain for or ill feeling towards those who do, I believe that we should collectively put more effort into not looking down on women who don't for any reason. While it is fine to present femininely and put as much effort as you want into makeup, women shouldn't have to look a certain way to be respected, able or otherwise. It's completely unfair that people have a non-zero minimum of makeup a woman must wear, and it's important to realize makeup is a choice. Some people have very good reasons for not partaking in it. Because no one should be told they have to look a certain way, buy a certain product, or change themselves to fit the desires of others to be respected. Because things that may be nothing to an able person may be a momentous task to people on the spectrum due to limited energy and executive dysfunction, which causes many of us to struggle with day-to-day tasks that able people would do easily and causes us to look uncaring and lazy, which is untrue. And because, yes, being a woman is hard, but it doesn't have to be. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Kayla Rodriguez. I'm a 22-year-old Puerto Rican autistic lesbian. Hopefully by sharing my story, I'll discover more women like me. I have type 1 diabetes, OCD, PTSD, depression, and anxiety. Today I would like to share my story so if any women have been through what I've been through, they won't feel alone. I was born in New York, but we moved around a lot. When I was 3 years old, I got diagnosed with PDD and my mom and dad got divorced. I didn't start talking until I was 4. My PDD later developed into Asperger's syndrome, but since that term is being thrown out of use, now I just say I'm autistic. Autism affects me a lot of certain ways. Some I grew out of, some I didn't. For instance, I used to not talk and not look people in the eye. Now I do like to talk, and I do look people in the eye. Autism makes me sensitive to loud noises, it makes me talk loudly, it makes me repeat myself often, it makes me message people too much, and it makes me have poor social skills. It also makes it hard for me to deal with my emotions, stress, and changes. Autistics are known for having obsessions, and I had a lot of them. Now I'm obsessed with video games. My autism also makes it hard for me to be independent, and I never want to live by myself. Despite these challenges, I accept being autistic because it makes me who I am, and it makes me have a unique perspective on the world. When I was 8 years old, I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. Type 1 diabetes makes me inject insulin into myself 3 times a day, and it makes me test my blood sugar several times a day. In 2005, I moved to Florida, where I started getting bullied by my classmates and my teacher, Miss Ryan. My classmates called me Miss Diabetes to make fun of me, and Miss Ryan was just so mean to me and didn't stop the bullies. I was known for being so kind and caring, but when Miss Ryan started bullying me, I had my first ever bad thought of wanting to hurt her. She also made me develop a fear of teachers that lasted until the end of high school. At the end of the school year, my mom found out about this, and she sued the Board of Education and got Miss Ryan fired. This was the first time I saw the power of advocacy. Back then, autism wasn't really well known, and when it was diagnosed, it was mostly boys. So coming of age as an autistic girl was very hard. My mom had to Xerox autism literature for the teachers so they can understand me. During this time, my stepfather became abusive. He was an alcoholic, so it was really weird because he was also very mean to me and my family, but he was also so close to me. Due to the poor social skills caused by my autism, I lacked the social cues to whether or not this was wrong or not. I later did find out that it was wrong. This all happened while I was discovering my sexuality. In 2007, I fell in love with my first ever best friend, who was the first person to ever accept me for who I am outside my family. She was straight, so nothing ever romantic happened between us, but she made me realize I liked girls. Despite being her friend and having one other friend, I was mostly alone in my room. The struggles of being lonely, having feelings for my best friend, struggling with my family life, and all the bullying eventually led to me becoming suicidal. In 2008, I planned for the first time to kill myself. Suicide is a hidden epidemic in autistic people. In studies conducted a few years ago, 11 to 14% of autistic kids have considered suicide, and 50% of autistic adults have considered suicide. It's probably because it's hard to grow up and live in a society that doesn't accept or understand you. For kids, it's a struggle to accept themselves and understand themselves and all the bullying. For adults, it's a struggle to have a social life and get a job. There needs to be suicide prevention services in the autism community. I was always anxious and awkward in school, but when I entered high school, these feelings increased dramatically. This was also the time where I started going to psychiatrists and taking medication, but the medicines really didn't help me until recently. Junior year ended up being the worst year of my life so far. In the middle of the school year, I moved to Georgia, so that means I was lonely again. On May 2nd, 2013, I was raped by my stepfather. It was the worst year of my entire life. Worst day of my entire life. He was in my life for 12 years, so that means he was a part of my childhood. So whenever I think about my childhood, he's there and I hate it. It's been 6 years, and I haven't really moved on from it. I did report him to the police, but since the age of consent in Georgia is 16, they couldn't do anything, which is weird because since I'm technically a minor when I'm 16, so does that mean I'm a victim of pedophilia? I have to accept that I'll never get justice. The Me Too and Time's Up conversations have been going around greatly lately, and that's great. But what needs to be in conversation are women with disabilities, other neurodiverse women, and women with autism because we are more likely to experience sexual assault than other neurotypical women. We need to make sure we get the support services that we need, and the people who commit these horrors will get what they deserve. In the middle of my senior year of high school, I was having a lot of stress and meltdowns, so the high school I was in referred me to a GNET school. GNET is basically like, they don't even emphasize learning at all. You just do the assignments and you pass. But despite this, at the end of the school year, I was under 2 classes to graduate. So I pushed myself to graduate as soon as I can. Because of all the stress, I developed OCD. I did end up graduating in December 2014. After this, my OCD started getting worse. I used to wash my hands so much that it became raw and red, and I had to wear gloves. This was also a time where I started getting into heated fights with my mom and sister. While I do realize now that autistics are known for having violent outbursts sometimes, I still regret that I hit them during these fights, and I don't know, hopefully I'll forgive myself someday. Even though autistics are known for having violent outbursts, we're not the violent people that the media portrays us to be. I also had limited social interaction because I wasn't in school and I didn't have a job, so I was basically lonely. However, things soon changed. I didn't really have a passion for a career as a kid, and my IEP meetings never developed a plan for me out of high school. So I was stuck and I have no plan. And I'm still stuck, but hopefully I'm starting to get a plan going along. I want you to know you don't need a college degree to have a job. There are plenty of careers out there that don't require a college degree. And I also have poor social skills, so it's really hard for me to make a connection with people. So combine this with the struggle for gay people to meet other people. Combine this with how hard it is for gay people to meet other gay people. It's a real struggle to find a partner, and I've never had a girlfriend in my life. Ever since I was raped, I became more passionate about what's right. I keep learning more about social issues. I'm against all forms of hate, including racism, sexism, ableism, homophobia, and transphobia. And I'm deeply in the fight against sexual harassment and assault and abuse. In 2016, I joined Autistic Self-Advocacy Atlanta, where I met a group of autistics, women and men, where I can relate to and I feel like I belong. I met Aaron Denberg Niederhofer, who then the next year referred me to the Bobby Dodd Institute Ambassador Program, where I trained under my mentor, Kylie Moore, and won the Golden Goldie Award for Young Community Advocate with. From that program, I met Mark Crenshaw, and he then referred me to the LEND, Leadership Education and Neurodevelopmental Disabilities Program, and this has been an exciting program for me to be a part of. Sometimes I'm the only gay, autistic, or Latinx person in any given space, and it makes me uncomfortable. I still think of the trauma that have plagued me for years every single day. I sometimes need strength to keep going to stay alive, so if anyone can give me that strength, please let me know. The effects of past trauma or the reasons I still have the problems I deal with today. I'm not depressed because of my autism. I'm depressed because of how people treated me due to my autism. However, I'm still here, so that's gotta mean something. You're not weak for asking for help. You are brave and strong because you have the courage to fight for your life. We need to make sure girls get diagnosed quickly and early because girls experience life on the autism spectrum different than a boy. The Me Too and Time's Up conversations have been going around, but we need to make sure that women with disabilities, other neurodiverse women, women with autism are heard because our rights are as important as able-bodied neurotypical women's rights are. Disability rights are human rights. We need to have services catered to us by people who understand us. We also need to make better representation in the media, because it's always these white male geniuses that tell the story of autism. I've never seen a woman of color / gay autistic, or even a female autistic. And we need to represent all forms of autism so autistics can see themselves represented. In turn, be understood, people can learn more about autism and understand autism. Finally, just accept yourself. Your autism isn't a flaw, it's a strength. So focus on your strength to help you succeed. Writing this speech has been therapeutic for me because I'm getting it all out there that has been inside of me for so long. My mom has shown me what advocacy was, and I've strived to be the advocate that she was for me for other people. Thank you, and may my story inspire others.
Laura popped up on the screen a little earlier than we expected. Hey Laura, how are you? Great, thank you. So everybody, the next person to present this afternoon is Laura Nadine, Skyping from New York.
I consulted with people who were touted as business savvy in an effort to touch others with my work and still meet my basic living expenses. I spoke with CEOs and venture capitalists, marketing experts, financial advisors, entrepreneurs, paying for their advice with trips to Starbucks, even if that meant a dinner of rice and beans for me. All of them made the same general points. You have to advertise, create flyers, post them around town, give them to local schools. You need to apply for business loans. Money is how you make money. You need to advertise yourself as a music therapist because that's where the money really is. Some people told me I would be better off getting a minimum wage job at Walmart so I could draw on disability. I can promise you that all of these advisors were not autistic. The year was 2012. I was a single parent of 2 living on an income of about $8,000 a year. I was unable to afford advertising for my business of teaching violin, viola, cello, and piano. I had been placing flyers for years, volunteered at local schools, sat on numerous boards offering the autistic viewpoint, sometimes only as a token, on everything from education, reform, to community program development. I'd done everything, including borrow money to build the business. I was working really hard. One afternoon, I saw a Bush's Baked Bean commercial. You might remember these. They're the ones with the devious dog that holds the secret recipe. As I watched the commercial, I was hit with an epiphany. I hate beans. I was sick and tired of eating beans. No more beans. I wanted filet mignon, imported Italian pastas, fine teas. I wanted a lifetime supply of Honey Nut Cheerios. So I thought, what can I do at no cost that lets people know where I am? I did everything I could to maintain an account with a cable internet provider so that I could have internet. Internet, a very powerful tool. I set up accounts with everything I could find for free. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Tumblr, YouTube, Vimeo, LinkedIn. I even submitted my college film project, My Violin Cries, to a film festival so I could have an IMDb page. I used Google numbers to establish a Los Angeles phone number so I could give the illusion of being a bigger business. An idea a businessman told me would work. While attempting crowdfunding to create an album, John Schaefer, an independent film director from Arizona, approached me on Twitter wanting to Skype. He wanted to make a documentary about me about my ability to shadow listen. That's what I call it, shadow listening. I hear music in everything I see, all the time, like a soundtrack that never stops playing. You see, I'm not a music therapist. I'm a shadow listener. But when people look at me, they see my limitations. They see a woman alone and assume I'm too burdened by my autism or by taking care of my children to do anything more than just merely exist. John wanted to do more and started to work on a documentary about me called The Shadow Listener. It started to feel hopeful, and I thought maybe my efforts were paying off. Still, I had so much of my own past to reconcile. It was becoming very evident that I was dragging an unresolved past with me, something I think women do often. I was born on February 28, 1977. I was a delightfully odd child. I think the technical term is pain in the butt. We didn't call it autism then. That diagnosis wouldn't come for me until the age of 27. My parents noticed I was odd, off, different, whatever word was chosen at the time, but I was the youngest of 4, and so it just wasn't alarming. I possessed similar traits to my grandfather, so they thought I was just like him. Looking back on it, he probably was autistic too. What seemed to be noticed by my parents was the polar opposite differences within me. For example, despite starting violin at age 10, I was playing semi-pro at age 14. I was the youngest player to hold a principal chair in the Rome Symphony Orchestra. However, I couldn't tie my own shoes until I was 13. I could answer all the science questions in Trivial Pursuit at age 8, but I couldn't sleep away from home until I was 19. There was an obvious gap between my physical age, my emotional age, and my intellectual age. At the physical age of 13, about grade 7, I was emotionally still a 9-year-old, requiring reassurance and support from people around. Yet intellectually, I could converse with Mensa candidates 3 times my age. I was not like my peers, and boy, did they ever let me know it. To cope, I focused inwards on my abilities with the guidance of an incredibly supportive teacher, a mentor. I learned to communicate to the world around me through music. I could share a laugh or a tear. I could tell a story or take the listener on an adventure with me. Miss Stephanie, my violin teacher and lifelong mentor, allowed me to explore music in my own way, but still gently guided me back to the realm where my ability could become my means. As I approached middle school age, it felt an even greater distance from my peers, and that distance seemed to be growing exponentially. I couldn't understand their games. I was impatient with teachers who couldn't see that I was testing them. I became bored and withdrawn. But I didn't get in trouble because I was a girl and I was quiet and I seemed good. With the invention of the Macintosh computer, came a great freedom for me. You might remember the little toaster Mac. I was able to take the music I heard in my head and put it to paper, and I composed pieces for the violin. First, Tarantella Russo, which won the state title. My first and only composition submission for a prize. Won the prize. As the world became more than I could bear, I reverted to my root and composed the world I wanted to live in. I did drop out of high school at the age of 16 and entered into a very dark time in my life, especially around relationships. My difficulties with perspective taking and my deep, unfiltered trust put me in dangerous situations. This continued until I was diagnosed with autism at age 26. My son, who was 3 at the time, and my daughter was 5. I lived in a tumultuous relationship which ended in divorce. I weighed all of 98 pounds with a waist size of 24 inches, which is way too small even for someone 5'2". My intellectualism and ideals were simply not enough to overcome my ineffective approaches to the people I should include in my life. Now, I only tell you this because I lived what many of you feared your child with autism would live. I made those mistakes because I didn't know I had autism, and that autism could make my interactions with people difficult. I thought everyone saw the world the way I did. Why not? In my world, flowers sing and everyone is good. It was a looking glass kind of world. My diagnosis was the best moment of my young life. The word autism presented me with a toolbox. Imagine an electrician trying to wire your house with plumber's tools. You see, I had spent my life as an electrician using a plumber's toolbox. But with autism, I was given the right toolbox to make the most of my life. Dreaming seemed possible again. I changed my approach to parenting, returned to teaching music to any child who wanted to learn, including students with disabilities, both verbal and not. I had fallen, but I didn't want to stay down. True, maybe I fell harder than some others, but as a result of falling, I found my way. Let me fall, and I too will become a legend. I have developed my abilities to support me in life. I pay my own bills. I raised my kids completely alone. They're now 19 and 21. I have friends, and though they are few, they are solid, and I love them very much. When I was told by a publisher there was no market for books written by women on the spectrum, I self-published I Am Snamu, Snamu being the words human, backward, and the puzzle for Angie titles that I sell out every time I'm at conferences. When I was told my music wouldn't sell, I raised my own funds, something women hear often in the music industry. I recorded my own album at home using my MacBook Pro. While faced with a world where there's 66% of people with autism are unemployed, I stand in contrast as an entrepreneur, sharing my abilities with the world, and I do it without flyers, business loans, or help from the big autism industry, corporations like Autism Speaks, who claim they build better autistic lives. Instead, I earn a living being paid for my expertise as an autistic person by people who value my contributions. Because autism is a weight when it's placed on my shoulders, but a foundation when at my feet. The power of overcoming is the architect of life. As I said, I hear music in everything I see, even people. When I first met Brian, who I married in July, I got to watch him coach his hockey team, and though he was filled with passion, he was dressed in patience. As I watched, I listened to his song and how it was influenced by the kids he coached. He radiated compassion like ripples on a pond, and I could hear these ripples as they gently bumped those he was teaching. The children he taught admired him deeply. So much of the group of children sounded almost in unison. What was particularly amazing about this shadow song was the teacher was not the melody. His pupils were. He was the harmony. I may not be able to read his facial expressions with the accuracy of neurotypical people or interpret the tone of his voice, but I could hear his song. Instead, autism is my conduit to understanding the world around me and developing genuine connections with people in it. It was not a cure, or a diet, or a pill that has made life with autism more successful for me. Instead, it is access to technology, a community of people who understand me, and having the room to use my unique gifts in a way that elevates me. Free internet and affordable technology in my hands gave me a platform outside the radius limited by my means. And when I couldn't afford to put gas in my car, I was still able to publish posts on my blog and teach violin students online through a webcam. It was access to free internet that helped a film director connect with me to bring my story to a worldwide audience, including a recent screening in Singapore. You may wonder what the significance is of all of this. Well, each year I receive hundreds of emails from parents who feel scared and lost, not knowing what to expect following a diagnosis. They tell me their stories and how it's even changed the perception of their own child. The voice of the self-advocate is often the little ray of hope that parents and young autistic people need to hear. But self-advocates are often muzzled by a cacophonous chatter of negativity spewing from policymakers, medical professionals, and ever-growing pharmaceutical industry, which compounds even more for females on the spectrum. As you reflect on my story today, think about what self-advocates have provided you in your personal quest with autism. As a parent, I understand your fears and your desires to ensure your child have a happy, safe, and healthy life. But I also understand your autistic children's needs. If you're one of those hundreds of parents that have utilized free internet resources from self-advocates, I applaud you for having the courage to reach beyond the rhetoric of the industry and trusting the voice of people who live with autism. But I also ask you to take a moment to support self-advocates when you can. Entrepreneurial opportunities, presuming competence, and an opportunity to do more than be wedged into the corners of society. An opportunity to redesign our world. My name is Laura Nadine, and I have autism. Thank you.
Speech. My name is Becky and I am a 16-year-old girl from Toronto, Canada. I was diagnosed with autism at the age of 11, but found out I had it later in life. When I was about 13 years old, I decided to show the world that people with autism should be accepted and understood. Now, I am an advocate for people on the autism spectrum and people with selective mutism. We should all be appreciated for who we are. I have reached out to people from all over the world with whom I could relate to, such as advocacy groups and autistic people in England, Texas, and of course, including those here in Georgia. And that helps me out a lot. It helps to know that I am not alone, and we help each other with our struggles. Throughout my work as a very ambitious advocate, I have made like-minded international friends that went through very similar things like me, and understand. We know that we are always there for one another. I work towards helping them become advocates as well, so that they could show that being different is wonderful, and different is never less. Besides autism and selective mutism, I also have different types of severe anxiety disorders, depression, OCD, and others, which all interfere with my daily life as an autistic very much. Even though I struggle with these challenges daily, I do everything I can for our community to raise awareness, understanding and acceptance of autism in our society. Have you ever wondered what it's like to be autistic? To be autistic means hearing and seeing things others don't always notice, which can have a grueling effect on your life. Every day, noises like pencils screeching, fluorescent lights, and students talking loudly at lunch can be a real trigger and overwhelm an autistic person. We can experience meltdowns due to all of the sensory overload we experience daily at work and mumble endlessly about an alien planet, or how he makes himself seen as a prophet. Have you ever wondered what it's like to be autistic? To be autistic means hearing and seeing things others don't always notice, which can have a grueling effect on your life. Every day, noises like pencils screeching, fluorescent lights, and students talking loudly at lunch can be a real trigger and overwhelm an autistic person. We can experience meltdowns due to all of the sensory overload we experience daily at work and school. They are really exhausting and hard to deal with, and it can feel like your brain is about to explode with all of the emotions and outside stimuli. We really need your understanding and in helping us avoid situations like these that cause us to feel out of control. Because of the sensory issues and cognitive differences that affect our daily functioning, we also have trouble with our learning and processing the information provided to us over a certain period of time. When I sit in class, and I hear the teacher mumble endlessly about an alien planet, or how he makes himself seen as a professional mathematician, I think to myself, why don't I understand any of this? I feel like an outcast from the class, like a failure, and I wish I understood what the topic was. But my brain seems too busy with thinking about something else. It's too hard to process, and everything else going on around me makes it seem like even the slightest thing can be the most difficult to understand. While everyone else is already learning and seems to be on topic with everything, I feel like the only one, with everything I deal with, who has trouble understanding the simplest things going on in the school environment. Why does society make it really hard for us, autistics, to live in this world as us, our true selves, and be openly autistic? This world has a lot of ableism, discrimination, and whenever they see something different or out of ordinary, they usually come to quick conclusions. This really hurts us as autistics. We have a really strong voice that needs to be heard. The hard thing is that we get dismissed a lot for our struggles, our pain, and we are often pressured by society to act neurotypical. My message to you all, professionals, parents of autistic children, teachers, and all the others here, is that all people matter. We might need to stim, which is our completely natural response to stimuli, a way of communication, and a way to physically express the way we feel and our emotions. It might seem weird or out of ordinary to you all, but trust me, we do have a reason for doing what we do. Let us be truly ourselves, accommodate for us, and see the beauty behind your unique, beautiful autistic child, student, or whoever it may be. As a person with autism, selective mutism, and other conditions, I have dealt with a lot of stigma, prejudice, along with inequity and injustice from most people, even therapists and teachers. I was excluded for my so-called weird behavior, the way I communicated, socialized with others, and the way I perceived different situations around me. I have come to say that with all this I had endured and experienced, that this is absolutely not right and should come to an end. I also have echolalia, which is a part of being on the autism spectrum. I repeat things I hear and may repeat it over and over again without meaning or context to the given situation. It's like my memory has been triggered and I am fully reliving the moment. It doesn't matter if the situation in which it happened occurred months or even years ago, but we may remember it very clearly in our minds, and say a particular word phrase over and over again indefinitely that stands out to us. It may as well be very unexpected, but I ask to all, please bear with us. Echolalia is a remarkable way for some people on the spectrum, myself included, to communicate and express their needs and wants. Embrace every single way the autistic person communicates, behaves, and reacts to the world. It indeed has a very deep meaning beneath the surface of what you can see, and it's a gift to have to see through that. Now, I would like to explain selective mutism to all of you and how it impacts my daily life and makes it live differently, as well. Selective mutism, SM for short, is a complex, severe anxiety disorder, in which a person who is normally capable of speech, cannot speak in specific, select situations and or while being in the presence of certain people. However, the same person is able to speak, sometimes even excessively, where they are comfortable and secure. For instance, with family and close friends. This condition is widely misunderstood, as most people have not even heard about it. There definitely needs to be more awareness spread of this condition, so that people like me, who are literally suffering in silence and constantly trapped inside their severe anxiety, so paralyzing it can take away our voice, can be understood. There is a great misconception that it is our choice not to talk, and we have control over it. In fact, that is definitely not a choice we make. Even though I desperately want to talk to you, my paralyzing anxiety that takes over won't let me. It is definitely painful to go through it, but it has a lot of positives too, because due to my struggles with SM, I am more sensitive to other people's struggles and challenges. Talk to me as you would to anyone else, even though I might not be able to respond verbally to you at all. It feels great to be connected and included, and can make my anxiety a bit easier to handle. The one thing to remember is to never pressure a person with selective mutism to talk to you, even to say one word, as this may make our anxiety even worse and make us even more uncomfortable and harder to start talking in a given situation. If a person with SM talks to you, that is a wonderful thing, and it is a way for us to say that we feel comfortable and trust you with everything we go through. It is one of the hardest things for people with SM to talk in anxiety-inducing or unexpected situations, so it is something to be cherished. Selective mutes can be talkative and even chatty with the people they do talk to. The people I can talk to are my immediate family and very close friends. I cannot speak to most people at all. I haven't said a single word at school in over 2 years. Can't talk to our family, friends, and even doctors. People with SM often still struggle with severe anxiety, even in situations in which they can speak. Understanding and inclusion can help a lot. I hope you all can spread my message of inclusion, acceptance and understanding to the autism and SM community everywhere. We deserve to be heard. Despite of all my constant challenges I go through and the hardships I face, I can say that it has honestly helped me to become a better, more understanding and compassionate person overall. Thank you so much everyone for letting my voice being heard, and please remember, autistic people and people with SM have a lot to say and differences should be accepted. It's now time for a positive change in our world. We rock. Have a wonderful week and let autism be embraced. Let's shine autistic and selective mutism sparks everywhere to show our commitment to make this world a better, safer and more inclusive place for all of us. It really means a lot to me that I got this amazing opportunity to travel to share my story of my life with autism and selective mutism for the first time outside of my home city, here in Atlanta. Thank you all so much.
Good afternoon. It's great to be here. Since we're live on YouTube, hello world. I'm Maya Sundermeyer, and I will soon be changing that to Ryan, and I will explain why later. But right now, I wear about 6 hats in our society. First one is that I'm a research and project assistant in the Center for Leadership and Disability, and that's housed in the School of Public Health at Georgia State University. A second hat that I wear is that I'm an undergraduate student in psychology, and I am working on my bachelor's degree, as well as going off into a master's in public health and biostatistics, being that I love math. I'm also a entrepreneur for my blogging brand, Hello World with Maya, and on YouTube, those are more day in the life type vlogs, and I've really have been doing that for 5 years, and started out sharing my experiences of living with autism and doing things like giving my 2 cents on what's going on with autism in the media, as well as providing tips and advice. And then I recently fell into this trend of day in the life daily blogging after falling in love with a YouTuber named Casey Neistat. I hope you're watching today, Casey. You're one of my favorite people. I'm also a homeowner in the greater Atlanta area, and I recently just got a redheaded roommate last year named AJ, and she says meow. And another hat that I wear is that I'm involved at the Autism Airport rehearsal tours because I love to fly, love to travel everywhere. And what you may not have guessed about me is that I am on the autism spectrum, or I'm autistic, I have Asperger's syndrome, tomato, whatever. What I wanted to do is talk to you a little bit more about my experiences of being a woman on the spectrum. So at the age of 2, my mom discovered traits that resembled autistic characteristics. The first one, I did not like being hugged. I didn't maintain eye contact. I did not like the same types of interests as other children. And when before I was born, she saw a documentary that all autistics couldn't talk, but I could. She couldn't figure it out. And she also had seen me do things like echolalia, where I scripted a line from a famous commercial with a Burger King where the elderly lady says, "Where's the beef?" She also noticed that I was very hyper, and so what my parents did was they spent the next 9 years putting time and money into finding out whether or not I was autistic. So I went to various doctors, and we got a load of information. Number one, one doctor said that when I was 3 years old, he's a pediatrician, he thought I was really smart and said, "Miss Sundermeyer, your daughter will go to college." And then other people, other doctors said that I couldn't, said that she was crazy, and they laughed at my mom. So despite that, I was diagnosed with ADHD at the age of 5. I was put on Dexedrine and Ritalin, and that was because I was so hyper. My teachers wanted me to concentrate in school. And then finally, at the age of 11, I was diagnosed with pervasive developmental delays, none other specified. I was also placed into special ed, but I will talk about that in a minute. But what I want to do is talk about 5 major areas of my life. First, I'd like to talk about my education. I'd also like to talk about making friends, gaining my independence, employment, and of course, Dr. Temple Grandin. And I'll explain why on that later. So first and foremost, I was put into the regular mainstream classroom for the first year and a half. The first mainstream, I had a special education paraprofessionals, and they began to develop an IEP with me. And in the middle of first grade, they sent me to a special education program called Badge for students with maladaptive behaviors and ADHD, and then they gradually brought me back to the mainstream classroom with this special education system where I was learning how to do my work and just growing academically. And so I went off and had mainstream from 3rd grade through 5th grade, and then by the time I was 11 years old, I had my autistic diagnosis. I was sent to another special education program where they supposedly knew everything they could about autism, and then I had an IEP once again, or an individual education plan. You guys know what I'm talking about. Basically, I was not allowed to have a general education. If I wanted to take a foreign language, or if I wanted to take chemistry, I was often told that's too hard. I had modified classes. I was often told that I would never move on with my life. I was often told that all of my dreams were unrealistic, and I was often shot down. And they were also very controlling with me. And they were also telling me that I would have a very different trajectory. Basically, the adult transition, get on Social Security, be put into a group home, get under a guardianship, all that kind of thing. And people saying that I would. Sorry. People would say that the older I would get, the more help I would need. Different things like that. I was often shot down. But needless to say on that, I ended up really growing by the time I was 18, 19. I decided I didn't want to go on that path. So when I moved down to Atlanta, I grew up in Minnesota, and I should have brought that up, I decided to look further into my education, and I fell in love with Georgia State University, but I didn't have the background. So when I moved down here to Atlanta, I lived with a family member, and I'll talk about her later. But basically, she bought me study materials, such as math books, first grade math level books, and reading comprehension, and everything I could to get myself back on track. I can't do this. Sorry, guys. Bear with me. I also had to learn this. I also had to learn everything from scratch. Again, that's what happened with the math. And then by the time I was ready, I went back to school. Yeah, thank you. So what I want to do is mention that I recently went off to get my associates in psychology after going through all that. And I was told I would never amount to that, would never go off to get a degree. They told me to go off to cosmetology school. So I was able to prove them wrong, however, by going off and getting this associate's degree and going off and showing the world that, hey, I'm better at math than most of the other kids in my class. And so that's one part of it. What I would like to do now is talk about my struggles in making friends, or what it's been like. But during childhood, I had regular friends, and these friends and I hung out. We did things together. Meanwhile, there were other kids that picked on me, called me nerd. I had friends from the age of 4 all the way up to the age of 14 years old. And I made friends in daycare, and one of them and I became best friends, and we did things like sleepovers, and we went camping together. She celebrated my birthday. I celebrated her birthday. We talked on the phone every night, all that jazz. However, as she got older, she turned about 14. This friend ended up meeting her first boyfriend. After that, I became less of a focus in her life. In fact, I became a joke to her because she was talking about boys and makeup and hair, and I was still fixated on Disney films like The Lion King, Pocahontas, The Hunchback of Notre Dame. And so I got picked on for that, and she became the bully to me. I also was picked on when I was in special education. I was picked on by other kids. They didn't want to be around me because all I did was talk about The Lion King, and I got taunted in school. I was told that Simba's dead every day when I was 13 years old. Even the kids in special ed who claimed to be my friends, they soon ganged up on me, and they started shutting me out, and they started leaving me out because there was one person in there who claimed to be my friend who wanted to be the queen bee. And so I got left out a lot. However, I ended up making friends with my bus driver, and this woman was in her 50s, and she and I have had a great relationship ever since, and I'm sure she would love to hear what I have to say. Meanwhile, my case manager blamed me for this bullying that was going on, and she was supposed to be an autism specialist. And she told me that I needed to reach out more and that I was jumping to conclusions when I really knew what was going on. When I was also a teenager, I would go to other social outlets like confirmation, but I was afraid to make friends with the other kids at my church because I was afraid if I let them know that I like Disney films, I was going to be the laughing stock. I was going to be teased. I mean, it was already stressful enough to hear people telling me that Simba's dead. And now, I'd also like to tell you that I had tried to make friends with the wrong people, like my roommates. I lived with them first years ago before I lived here in Atlanta. I tried to make friends with them, but they really wanted something else. For them, they wanted somebody that could pay the rent, pay the bills. Thank you so much. Okay. I am so nervous being up. This is my first time making this kind of a speech. I also do better with visuals like PowerPoint. That's what I should have done, was made a PowerPoint this morning. People also had to point out to me when someone was not interested. For example, if someone was nice to me, I thought they were my friend. And when I would introduce these people to my parents or other people who were getting to know me, they would point it out, Maya, they're not interested in you. They're rude to you. Move on. Yet I would still try to give these other people a chance. And this included a crush I used to like from a number of years ago. But another thing I heard too is that I had a hard time understanding hints, understanding that somebody is interested in me and someone who's... Okay, thank you. Is that better? Well, I had a hard time understanding hints. Where somebody wasn't interested in me, like they'd make excuses to me, I would take them seriously. I would say, well, maybe they'll be nice to me the next time. Maybe they'll understand. And then, or maybe they'll get back to me. They have busy lives. And then they were always too busy for me, and other people had to tell me, Maya, can't you take a hint? What's the matter with you? So I eventually began to get this gist after 3 or 4 times of them saying no in the forms of excuses. So that is something that has always been a struggle for me, is understanding when someone is really serious, rather somebody is being, or is just being sarcastic or making excuses. And then when I made friends with another girl on the spectrum, we were friends for about 8 years. She and I talked about that a lot. She had some of the same struggles where she would invite people to things, and then they would often tell her how busy they were. And these were people outside of her group of friends, which mainly had special needs or disabilities. But she said that she would get together with her friends, or not with her friends, but she'd get together with her friends and they'd be cool with it. And then these other people would invite her out to lunch, and that's how far they could go. And then when she invited them to anything, they refused. I also had trouble with social skills, too. When I moved down to Atlanta in 2003, my aunt said that I had problems with social skills. Basically, she said that I had problems looking at people in the eyes or really acknowledging them. And so she would role play with me, and she would look down on the floor and imitate me and role play and show me how I was acting. And then she was showing me how I should act versus how I should not act by basically just learning how to acknowledge someone and look at them in the eye, which is quite painful for me. I get afraid of facial expressions. So, and then in the meantime, I ended up joining the Emory Autism Center in 2003. And I was re-diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome, and I got involved in the adult programs there, as well as joining another adult Asperger support group, and I made several friends there. Almost done? Okay, so I am so sorry, guys, but I also wanted to mention a few more things. I tried living on my own, and that was trial and error, but this was before I moved to Atlanta, and I struggled greatly with picking up on cues over there. I had problems with managing my money, as well as picking up when I had to have responsibilities on things such as roommate agreements. And of course, my roommates didn't know what was going on, in addition to me not disclosing to them that I have autism. Sorry. Thank you very much, guys.
Hello, everybody. I am Mimi Sapra, and I am 31 years old and an autistic woman who lives in Atlanta and moved from Connecticut. I overcame many challenges in life since early childhood. I was diagnosed with autism before age 4. Until then, I had no language and barely spoke. When I attended the Walden Preschool at the Emory Autism Center, I began speaking in 5 to 7 word sentences at age 4. When I was young, my hearing was very sensitive. Loud sounds such as fireworks, thunderstorms, and even music bothered me a great deal. My reaction to these sounds were to prevent my family from playing music, skipping holiday traditions that involve fireworks, and persevere on obsessive thoughts when it thunderstorms. As I got older, my hearing became less sensitive, so now I enjoy music, see fireworks on special holidays and occasions, and deal with thunderstorms. I became aware of my autism when I was in middle school. Autism makes me different from typical people because I had to learn social skills which did not come natural to me. For people I have never met before, I am generally shy with talking with them at first until I get to know them better. I tend to become oversensitive and feel hurt when people make fun of or criticize me. In school, when kids make fun of me, I deal with that by staying focused on my schoolwork and talk to an adult who can help me address these issues. I relate better to older people who are more mature, such as my brothers and parents' friends, as well as all my friends in the autism community because they have a better understanding of me and my autism. I am a rule-driven person who thrives on routine, keeps things organized, gets things done on time, and being punctual. When my rules are not followed and my routines change at the last minute, I become agitated and have difficulty in adapting to such changes. I and most other autistics thrive on predictability in our environments to prevent stress, anxiety, and even meltdowns. One of the gifts from my autism is being blessed with an excellent memory. I am able to recall facts, dates of events, and many details very easily. For example, while transferring over 3,200 songs on my iPod from one computer to another, we lost 11 songs in the process. I was able to find the missing songs simply by reading over the playlist very carefully in less than 15 minutes. Whenever my parents cannot remember something, they ask me. My father calls me a walking Palm Pilot and jokes that he is going to create a website called AskMemes.com. My family calls me Memes or Mimi. My memory has helped me excel in school, resulting in high grades in both high school and college. In high school, I graduated with a 4.0 GPA and made several honor rolls. In college, I made several merit lists and dean's lists, as well as graduating with cum laude at both Brenau University and DeVry University. I am also blessed with many talents that my family and friends are proud of me of. I am talented in art, music, and marathon running. In art, I am good at drawing people. In music, I made all-state chorus 3 times in high school. In marathon running, I ran cross-country in college and also completed 10 full marathons. My best marathon time was 3 hours, 33 minutes, and 52 seconds in the 2017 Publix Georgia Marathon in Atlanta, Georgia. My next marathon will be the Skidaway Island Marathon on March 23, 2019 in Savannah, Georgia. I represent many of my friends in that one of my goals throughout grade school was to make friends. Before my graduation from high school, I and several other people in my school's autism program exchanged numbers for the sake of having friends to speak with after graduation. Later, I made new autistic friends with people I met through Aaron Niederhofer, such as Sean Perkins, Julie Marchenko, and other autistics who are part of ASAA, and began to attend more social activities in order to know people more. My friendship circle allowed me to always have people to spend time with, confide in, and ask for help and more. Thanks to my friends that I made and friends being introduced to me through my friends, I have gone through incredible changes as a result of exposure to different situations, events, and experiences. As I pursued and obtained degrees in 2 different colleges over the years, I began to study in various areas that would help with my employment. First, I attended Brenau University Women's College in Gainesville, Georgia, and majored in liberal arts with primary concentrations in music and history, and secondary concentrations in biology and psychology. After obtaining my liberal arts degree, I pursued my second bachelor's degree at DeVry University in Alpharetta, Georgia, where I majored in computer information systems with a concentration in web development to obtain greater marketable skills for the workforce. Through my growth, I have been able to obtain employment performing skilled work at a small business called Care Now Services, which is work that will gradually allow me to take on new responsibilities and go further than before. This will be the 3rd time I have spoken on a panel, and it won't be the last time that I serve as an advocate, which will empower me to continue taking the initiative and seeking independence.
Great job, Mimi. Wonderful. Thank you. Okay. Our last speaker this afternoon is Sunny Donnellan. Sunny, would you please come up? Thank you.
Hello, my name is Sunny Donnellan, and I am an autistic self-advocate, and I also really see myself as someone who can inspire other people like myself to advocate for themselves. And, well, you might be wondering, why am I even here today? Like, Well, I'll tell you, and that's because I want to inspire hope in the community. Okay, so I was born in the year 1996 and diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder and pervasive developmental delay, not otherwise specified, at age 3. And I also had echolalia, which means that while I could not form my own thoughts or opinions, I only could repeat what I heard other people or cartoon characters saying. This is important, as you will see why later. Now, I had been to the Walden Pre-K for almost a year at the Emory Autism Research Center. Now, at the age of 4, I discovered very quickly that one pre-K teacher in particular, and I don't know if he works there anymore, but his name is Jamal, and I'm going to expose him because he was a really bad teacher, and I'm telling you this because he didn't like me, and so I told my mom all of the ways I planned on getting rid of him. So first I decided to melt him with water, which is a reference from the Wizard of Oz. Next, I wanted to bake him in a pan of brownies. Then I wanted to stab him with a sword and shoot him to the moon on a rocket. Now, my mom was very astounded at not only my vocabulary, but also at my creativity. And let me tell you, both of my parents knew that I had been paying a lot of attention to experiences like baking brownies at home, for example. So much information. Thank you very much. So I also want to talk about a childhood friend named Sarah Cheney. Now, I was homeschooled, mind you, most of my childhood. And Sarah Cheney was like the only friend that I had, besides Solange from Walden. But Sarah and I got along really great. We saw each other almost every weekend. My favorite childhood memory of all is when we were both 9 years old. We took my pet hamster, Princess, a Siberian dwarf hamster, slid her across the kitchen floor with soap and water. And then we thought it was a good idea to dry her off with Q-tips. Kids these days. And then, so while I was homeschooled, I could not really read or write, and I didn't really understand mathematics either. Now, it wasn't until later when I was enrolled in a school for homeschooling families called the Summit Academy, which only met every Thursday. And I was in a world literature class, and a light bulb clicked where I learned how to read when I was 13. And I was reading the Odyssey and Les Miserables. And my mom said, "Are you sure you don't need me to read it to you, or can I get you the book on tape or something?" I said, "No." I did enjoy listening to the audio because I thought he could read it much better than I could. But I was still able to read the Odyssey and Les Miserables on my own and probably comprehended more than my peers. So I did really well at studies, but really struggled with social cues. Now, come 9th grade, I was no longer homeschooled, but I went to an online public charter school called Georgia Cyber Academy, which is, as it sounds, an online school. This is for all the kids in Georgia, kindergarten through 12th grade. Now, while I was in this school, I was so excited about my classes. I loved school. I did very, very well academically. And I did so well. I focused on my studies so I could graduate with my class. And the teachers sent my parents an email to tell them how well I participated in class. Now, I also wanted to point out, after I graduated high school in the class of 2015, my mom and I went to a young adult spectrum meeting where my boyfriend Aaron Niederhofer, in the audience here, was speaking on... Yes, I am an autistic female in a relationship. What? You should be arrested. Okay. So, I want to say this, that I met Aaron Denberg Niederhofer while he was speaking on a panel of him and 3 other autistic adults, with Maya Sundermeyer speaking on this panel as well, along with Paul Silver and one other. And it was Aaron who inspired me to become an autistic self-advocate. And he introduced me to people like Bennett Gaddis and Sean Perkins. And don't worry, Aaron, I'm not going to embarrass you. So, now, after that, I finally want to talk about something serious that happened to me. And as I mentioned before, autistic people struggle understanding social cues. So because of that, I dealt with sexual harassment both before and during college. So when I was 19 years old, I was shopping in Hot Topic, which is this trendy store for, it's like very edgy and cool, right? So I was there, and 2, not 1, but 2 slightly older men in their 20s came up to me and started talking to me, asking me what my name is, my number, and I just felt like I wasn't sure if it was wrong at the time, but I later knew that it was. Now, this woman who worked at Hot Topic, she helped me to understand what was going on, and she told me what to do, like call one of us or call security. Now, at the age of 19, I was finally enrolled into Gwinnett Technical College, and there I thought I had a bright future as a preschool teacher, so I started taking classes in early childhood care and education. But like a glove or a wedding dress that doesn't even fit properly, well, I eventually realized that ACCE wasn't a good fit for me because I had too many difficulties understanding very simple things, especially like what on earth does it mean to look professional in appearance? All they care about is straight lines and smooth curves and everything, and die cuts and everything. And all I wanted to do was get in the door and start teaching the kids. But no. That wasn't going to happen. Anyways, so the second time I got sexually harassed was while I was at college. I was working on a presentation, and not a presentation, I was working on a class project, and when I came out, it was already 10 o'clock p.m. This older man, who was about 6 feet tall, had darker skin, black hairs on his arms, black hair, a receding hairline, and was wearing a red shirt and black pants and black shoes, by the way. Yes, I remember this moment as clear as daylight. So he started talking to me and following me right behind me, making me feel super uncomfortable. And then the head of the department told me what I should do next time, and since I was calling Lyft, that it'd probably be best I wait inside. Now, I want to inspire all of you to be safe, but also want to let all the men out there know, all the young and old men out there know that women do not deserve rape or sexual harassment. Now, finally, I want to thank you all so much for coming, and I hope to spread more acceptance and love and support in this community. And without further ado, I'm Sonny Donelin, and I am on the autism spectrum.
Thank you very much, Sunny.
All right, you ready? Okay. Do you think and feel it's hard being on the high end of the spectrum than it is to be on the low end of the spectrum? And why? The question is, do you think and feel it's hard being on the high end of the spectrum or the low end of the spectrum? So I think you have to kind of walk through. Okay.
I would think it would be hard to be on the low end of the spectrum because you can't communicate and it's hard to live independently.
Okay, that's good. Straight to you. Sorry.
Well, I think it would be harder to be on the low end of the spectrum because there's so many people that misunderstand and I guess underestimate what someone like that can't do, because they're looking at a book by its cover. And in fact, there's a woman named Carly Fleischman, and she is on the low end of the spectrum, or she appears to be, but she uses a different part of her brain to communicate the way that Becky did. And she said that oftentimes people misjudge her as being stupid because she rocks back and forth because she can't talk the way that I can.
Okay. Thank you. Next question.
Okay. All right, so one of my questions is, you've all mentioned various things that have impacted you and trying to deal with the business world, the world out there, or even if you're in school still and you're, trying to deal with teachers and so forth. So if any of you want to answer, what is one thing you would want a boss or a teacher to understand? If you had one thing you wanted to make sure that you got through to them, what would that be?
One thing, right? I can have more.
That's hard.
There's so many things.
I know.
But one thing is just, I think, to be patient, because for me, for instance, I need breaks, I need some accommodations. I know it could be very frustrating, but
I want them to know that autistics are great.
I think just be patient, just be accepting. I know that's two things. Okay, I'll take that back. Be accepting together. Right. Be accepting and be patient, because I can do what. That's the thing. We can do what people want us to do. We have to do it differently.
Good point. Good point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do we want to pass it on?
I would like them to know that just because we're not doing something doesn't mean we're doing it we're not doing it on purpose. A lot of people seem to misunderstand when autistics don't do something, that we're just being lazy or that we're pitching a fit, when sometimes it's not the case. It's usually not, actually.
I agree.
Right next to you, and then pass back on.
I would say in the business world is reasonable accommodations, like enough breaks, and another is being patient with the autistic employee. Like if you're being hard on the autistic employee when they don't understand the assignment or the instructions, the autistic becomes easily upset when, say, the boss or the other coworker is hard on them.
I think, what was the question again?
It's just one thing one thing that you would want to have either a boss, or in your case, you're in school, a teacher to understand?
Well, I was going to say this in my presentation, and unfortunately that has a lot of work to do. That being said, I think what they need to know is that just because I have autism doesn't mean that I'm not interested in you. I'm interested in what you're interested in, because hey, your interests might expose me to something new.
We got Laura. Question online. Oh, that's right. Forgot.
Yes, go ahead.
Off. Could you move the cursor off, Laura?
Can I be heard?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I would say that I would like employers to know to talk to me, not at me. When we talk to, say, like a dog, for example, you expect the dog likes everything that you're saying, understands that you can follow its commands, but you are interested in a return conversation because you're not expecting one. And I find, especially as a female on the spectrum, I get a lot of that being talked at and not talked to.
Yes, I agree.
Thank you.
Thank you. So since inclusion is a big issue here amongst neurotypicals and autistic people, what can we do to help build inclusion? We all feel as one.
Well, not everybody's going to agree with this, but I think if you want to build inclusion, one of the things you should do is have education sessions at things like places of worship or things in our community, like in our homeowners association, and these presentations should be taught from autistics like ourselves, and it should be according to our levels, like in my case, using special PowerPoint presentations, and the presentations could be from our point of view.
They should learn from autistics.
Okay. And we have Caitlin right here. And then we'll get to Laura.
So I actually learned this in Lend. Basically, what we can do to help build inclusion is like to show that inclusion benefits everyone, not just those who want to be included. I was recently at this place called Lark, and the guy was like, everyone benefits from inclusion, and you know, so that's what I think we should do. Well, one of the things we should do is to show that inclusion benefits everyone.
Good. Okay, Laura, your turn. Oh.
Okay. I think inclusion means having people with disabilities in positions of leadership, such as teachers, lawyers, professionals, so that children on the spectrum or with any disability can see that it goes someplace. They're not just being given permission by neurotypicals to participate in society, but allowed to drive and create society.
That's great, thank you. Looking at, we've talked a lot about some general things as well, but I kind of felt a little curious about this one. I've been very excited because they brought on a lot of media having to do with autistics to understand, especially with the high functioning adult, like The Good Doctor. I watch it, love it, and there's, I think someone, what's that?
I like it.
Yeah,
I like it.
Yeah, and there's a lot of other ones on Netflix and so forth. So they've done a lot of kind of advertising to the public, just because someone behaves in a certain way does not mean they're not understanding or able to do their job and so forth. But what I find very curious is a lot of these TV programs, they're characterizing people with autism who are male characters. So I just wanted to kind of get an idea of how you guys felt. Do you feel like that depicts also what you guys are going through? So I'll start with Sunny.
Well, listen up, 11 Alive, and Fox, and Atlanta Journal-Constitution. we are women on the autism spectrum, and we have voices too. Yeah, in the media, TV shows, a lot of times, like you'll see, like in Big Bang Theory, where you'll have a character like Sheldon Cooper, who is a white male on the autism spectrum, and you will see, he's white. And then you'll have like characters in Star Trek like Spock, and people kind of argue that or debate that he is also on the autism spectrum. Well, he seems like so bright and intelligent, and we see white autistic males who are always like very bright and intelligent, or like someone like Rain Man, for example. Well. We need to tell businesses and lawyers to convince the media, we need to convince them to talk about women of color and women who are all on the autism spectrum. And a lot of the news will portray kids on the autism spectrum slamming and flailing, having meltdowns or screaming, but they need to be broadcasting our stories and talking about us who are very high on the spectrum. And so I just think that over time it's gonna get better. We'll be able to have our voices be heard. So that's what I wanted to say.
Well, I have recently been watching Atypical, and personally, I like the character Sam, but I'm seeing a few problems. First of all, the way that they portray him, he's almost like a carbon copy of Sheldon Cooper minus the genius theoretical physics aspect. And the other thing I've noticed is that they're not even paying attention to him. They're ignoring his character and paying more attention. I mean, heck, they're looking at the character Casey. I mean, she's one of my favorite characters, but they're paying more attention to her and her relationship with these girls in these schools. So that's the problem. Now, as far as women being preyed in the media, I've only seen one, and that's Temple Grandin. I mean, she's great, but logically, I think they could make a better Temple Grandin movie, and there are lots of other actresses that could play her better. I mean, Mara Wilson.
Sorry, Laura.
Okay, so I mean, there's Mara Wilson could play Temple Grandin, but we need other females we need other females out there. Like there's Daryl Hannah. Somebody could do a story on her. She's on the spectrum too.
I didn't know that either.
Oh, yeah, she is.
And then I'll go on to
What was the question again?
Basically, just from everything you're seeing in the media and the different programs and stuff, the public is seeing male characters who are on the spectrum. What about females? Your voice needs to be heard as well.
Yes, I completely 100% agree. I think that a girl's experience with autism are different than, I said female, right? A female's experience with autism is different than a male. There's so many things that we could talk about. I could go on this subject all day, but I won't. But basically, what we're seeing in the media does not portray our experiences, and it's actually further from the truth than it is from actual reality. It's funny that you brought up The Good Doctor, because I haven't, from the general autism community, I haven't heard good things about that show. I think they portray autism as a superpower, and it's supported by Autism Speaks, which, by the way, I hate. So there's so much stories that can be told about women, and not just women also. It's just what's it like being autistic and black? What's it like being autistic and gay? What's it like being autistic and, I don't know, Puerto Rican. You know what I'm saying? There's so many, what's it like to be me, or all of us? There's so much stories that can be told. And and also we don't go through the media doesn't portray everything about autism. for, you know, like something like periods, you know, like how does autism affect periods? You know what I'm saying? There's so many different things. You know, autism is a part of every race, every gender, every sexuality, and the media should portray that so everyone can learn more about autism, because a white male's experience is not everyone's experience.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And then Laura.
Yes.
Well, I think it's obvious that there's a gender and a race issue already with Hollywood, which hopefully is being broken wide open recently with some of the developments. And the current shows, of course, are going to depict what sells, right? They're going to want to make money. They're not documentaries. They're television programs that they want to make money on. I think the bigger questions actually come, what happened to the film that was filmed in Atlanta several years ago that had an all-artistic cast? And why that was never, that writer and that director is still unable to be able to push that concept through Hollywood, where we have people with disabilities playing people with disabilities. The other question I end up having is, what's going to happen when autism is no longer a buzzword? I remember back in the 80s when Down syndrome was the buzzword. And we had a television program called Life Goes On, where they had a young actor with Down syndrome portraying a character. But when autism became the buzzword, that disappeared to the background. So I think it becomes more, again, in the inclusion part, having autistic actors, directors, writers, and performers being able to tell stories from their perspective.
Okay, thank you. And to conclude this, our favorite question that we're all wanting to answer, what is the best thing about having autism?
For me, the best thing about having autism is I wouldn't really be here without it. You know, like, I have a great memory, like Mimi said. I'm kind and I'm caring and I'm passionate. It makes like the bad parts of me, but it also makes the good. You can't, in life you're never perfect, so, you know, you can't have one good without bad, but the good is so worth it to me. Like, it makes me me, and it gives me a unique perspective on the world that I wouldn't normally have, and it makes me passionate and care about things that I wouldn't normally have if I was an neurotypical. So,
Thank you. You can just hand the mic on down. There you go.
Okay.
Thank you.
Now, regarding your comment on superpowers, your brain is your superpower, but because you wouldn't be here without your brain, which has the superpowers. Anyway. So, what do I like about being autistic? I like my eidetic memory, which is how I feel like I can identify with the character Sheldon Cooper in that way. And I rely very heavily on my memory, and that's what makes me unique. I also am good at math, but I'm not a prodigy, and I'm not a savant. I had to learn math from scratch, and that's something I wanted to talk about when I was doing my presentation in my speech. But I had to learn math when I was 21 years old, and I'm not letting it go since. I mean, sure, I'm better at math than most of the kids in my class, but again, I'm not a prodigy, and I didn't have these numbers in my head, like 1 + 1 is 2 times X, Y, Z. But I mean, see, that would be a cool trait. I would love to have that. But what do I like most about being autistic? Like she said, it gives me a different aspect of the world. It teaches me how to care more.
Next, good.
Yeah.
The best thing about being autistic is seeing the world differently and being unique. It's seeing the world through a different lens and having a great opportunity to teach others. I have a unique perspective because I have marginalized conditions, and me with having autism and selective mutism can bring a totally different and unique perspective. You can always come up and ask me anything. I am very open about my experiences. My hardships brought many good things, like being an international advocate for autism and SM.
I think I'm just gonna parrot what everybody else has said so far and say my unique views on life in the world. Like, I have a unique perspective that I think a lot of neurotypicals don't understand, but despite them not understanding, I think it's like nice to have. Like, I see things that other people don't see, or I don't really know how to explain it. It's just like interesting, I suppose.
The nice thing about being autistic is maintaining a structured routine, keeping things organized, having an excellent memory, and having many talents.
For me, the best thing about being autistic is like Becky and Ford said, it gives me a unique perspective, and it also helps me to be, more caring, especially for other people on the autism spectrum. And I can identify with I can identify with certain characters, and I can also identify with other people on the autism spectrum. I can identify with a character from the movie Spirited Away named No Face, because he tried, I would say, because we both try to understand social situations, and we both try to pick up social cues and understand how to act in different ways. An autistic person can learn many things. Because of my autism, I can learn very fast, and I have a really good memory, which results in really good grades in classes. Unlike Maya, I will say that I really struggle with math. So hey Maya, maybe you could tutor me with my math, okay? I'll come into your condo at some point and knock on your door when I really need math help at 2 in the morning. But anyways, so yeah, I say the best part about being autistic is being able to relate to others, 2, having a really good memory, and 3, being just more caring and understanding.
Good. Good job. You good up there, Laura? Okay.
Yep. Are you ready for me?
Yeah.
Okay, there's a little delay, sorry. It's an extraordinarily difficult question to answer because I don't know what it's like to not be autistic. So to tell you the best thing about being something without actually understanding or knowing the opposite to me is a very difficult question. However, I can say that I really enjoy being brought into spaces like this and giving everybody just that moment of pause. I love the pauses. When you say something that kind of makes everyone go, okay, wait a minute, we didn't think of this before. Those pauses are what change society so that we don't rely strictly on habit and we can open things up. This is how Van Gogh made better paintings. This is how we evolve and change as a society. And I really enjoy being able to do that. And if autism is my conduit for it, then that would be my favorite thing.
Okay, thank you. As we kind of wrap up, I was told to ask you guys some questions. So just raise your hand. Do you now pretty much better understand what autism is? Raise your hand. Good. Or clap. Okay. Good. And do you now understand the struggles and what it's like to be a female with autism? Yeah. Do y'all have any questions to ask us? Okay.
And there's one final question, just a small one. Just simply trying new things, going into the unknown, whether it be an activity, an interest, a new knowledge, can often be very terrifying for someone on the spectrum, much more so than just a person without. What are some things that you found have helped you as you go into the unknown on anything?
That's really a tough question, but for me, what are some of the things that have helped me? Sometimes I have to research on the internet, and sometimes I've had, like my aunt, when she was still alive, I mean, that's why I'm going to change my last name to Ryan, because she was like my mom, despite the difficulties we had in our relationship. Because she herself was on the autistic spectrum, and she was the word-based thinker, and she spoke foreign languages and did accounting, but she did was expose me to some of her interests, such as classical music and gardening, opera. I mean, I was always interested in opera anyway. So.
That's good.
What helps me is knowing that everything will be okay. You know, like, this ain't the end of the world. For me, I just dive head first into it. And so far, it's benefiting me, I think.
That's good.
Thank you. Yeah, so I just, I just realized, life is too short. I've got nothing to lose. And just dive right head first into it because I know everything will be okay and it's not the end of the world. Yeah.
That is good.
Being around people like me who are also autistic because they understand me a lot like no one else does.
I know you had something that you wanted to ask.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Did you want to ask a question?
You know what this is?
No.
You know what this? Did any of you know what this is?
It's a monster from Mario.
Okay. And is there anybody else who, before we wrap up?
Maybe. Is this supposed to be a question?
Yeah. Question of the panel.
Okay. Do these stereotypes that we get as autistic people still infuriate you? Like for example, like sometimes I'm called a stalker, and they think that us on the higher end of the spectrum have it so much easier because we can talk or have verbal language or drive. I mean, okay, a few of us can.
Yes, I so agree with that.
Yes, I mean, in this social club I'm at, like on Saturdays, I get a bad vibe from them because I can drive, most of them can't. And one of them thought that my life was so much easier. And I tell them, really? You think my life is easy? It's not. Have any of you had to deal with that kind of stereotype? I was asking them, but...
Yeah, no, that's great. And I know we'll have to make this very, very quick, so just...
Short answers.
Right, short answers.
Well, stereotypes. Like, this is why we need to speak out more, so like we can debunk these stereotypes. Unpopular opinion. Well, there wouldn't be any stereotypes if there was no truth to them. However, I will say like these stereotypes that you mentioned do not apply to everyone on the spectrum. Thank you.
That's a good point. Yeah, just pass it down just real quickly.
I think with some of the stereotypes I seem to also been faced with many times, like if I'm being controlling or one-sided or selfish and having too many negative thoughts.
Can I just say yes?
Yes. Yeah.
Before I became good at math, there was a big stereotype and a common belief that all autistics are good at math. And before that, I thought, well, I'm not good at math, I'm terrible at math, I hate that subject. And then when I was exposed to learning it, I had the journey, had baby steps to get there, just like everyone else.
So the question was, does stereotypes infuriate you, right?
Yeah, but they're so much infuriating.
The real question is, does it not infuriate you?
It still does to me. I still face that most days.
I know, but that's what I'm saying. That's the question, because I'm just saying that yes, it does. And
Yeah,
the
it goes to
question
me
is,
too.
well, I was just saying, that of course it infuriates all of us. Why would they not be infuriated?
And Maya made a very good point. Like, I mean, there's also stereotypes that autistic people are geniuses with special talents, and that doesn't affect everyone. Like, and the ones with Savant syndrome, like in The Good Doctor, they get the most attention because of their amazing gifts of analyzing and calculating. And not every autistic person is built like that.
Yeah, everybody. Yeah. I have to say, real fast. I have to say it. I know I'm the moderator. Sorry.
I just want to say also, I'm not good at math. I never was good at math, so the stereotype that autistics are good at math is very, very rare.
What do you want to say?
Oh.
Laura. Oh, am I going?
Becky. Becky has something to say.
Becky?
called a stalker at my school, and people don't understand really what it's like to be autistic.
No more questions. We'll just finish up with Laura. Yeah.
And Laura, you can go ahead and go.
I would say that I used to be very infuriated, and then I hit in the 30s and decided I no longer cared what people thought about me. I don't know, I guess it get Beijing that you get to have, and now it fuels me. Now when people say I can't do something, now I just want to do it better, so that I can just say I did it.
Hey, Ashley, didn't you have something to say?
Oh yeah, I just want to say a quote because it's burning inside me. Say it. Well, once you met one person with autism, you got one person.
No, thank you.
Nobody is alone. We have the same diagnosis, but we're all different people. So just wanted to kind of say that.
Well,
Yes.
thank you, everyone. I'm afraid we've run out of time. Thank you all for being here today, and I just want to thank our panel again: Kayla Rodriguez, Becky Semenova, great to see you, sweetie, Mimi Sakura, Ford Gentry, Maya Sundermeyer, Laura Nadine, and Sunny O'Donnell. And I also want to thank our two moderators, Ashley Dudley and Karen Weissman. Also, Stars and Stripes for hosting this event. Of course, the lovely Laura. Laura, how did I forget you? I'd go back to you, that's why. Thank you, Laura, as well. Thank you for Skyping in from New York. It was very inspiring to hear your presentation, for sure. Yes, so also to Stars and Strikes for hosting this event, and to Erin for helping too with funding, and to our videographer, Robert, and our live streamer, is Araya?
Point at each other.
Araya.
Could you two point your cameras at each other so that
Yeah.
people will
Thank you.
And
videographers and videographing each other.
Oops.
yes, and Becky just wants me to remind you, I know we mentioned it, but you know, she's coming all the way from Toronto to be here today, so that's awesome. I think she deserves a round of applause. So again, thank you everyone for being here and supporting. This was the very first Autistic Women's Panel. I'm really proud of you ladies. You did an awesome job, very inspiring stories.
Yes.
You take care, stay safe, and you have a powerful day now.
All right.